Hello and welcome back, everybody. David Wallach here, New View Safety Coach. Thank you for joining us for another episode in the Shut Up David series. So, as you all know, this New View Safety Coach YouTube channel is about New View safety and about coaching, organizational coaching. And because I've been working in safety for so long, it's very easy for me to get hold of experts from around the world to talk to you about New View safety. What isn't so easy, because it's a lot more niche profession and skill set, is the coaching aspect. However, today we've got a superstar for you today. Our guest today, I'm going to read this because I want to make sure I get all her accolades and everything right. So our guest today is Charity Becker. Charity Becker is the head of coaching and leader development at the Institute of Executive Coaching, IECL. Charity has spent most of her career in transitional and developmental coaching at senior levels in financial institutions and has worked on the strategy and implementation for ANZ and NAB's executive coaching panels. For those of you not from Australia, ANZ and NAB are some of the largest banks here in Australia. Charity's area of expertise includes coaching as part of leadership development programs, coaching to support promotions and transitions of individuals within organizations, graduate coaching, and we'll come back to that in a minute because it's relevant, coaching based on 360 feedback for raised self-awareness and behavioral change. So 4 years ago, Charity was actually part of the group that first introduced me to organizational coaching. I was put through the training course, and Charity was on that for the Level 1 organizational coaching. We'll probably cover that later on in the talk as well. She's super friendly and professional coach and facilitator, as well as being very wise. And we are lucky to have her with us today to have this in-depth discussion to talk about her professional experience, what exactly organizational coaching is, and an overview of IECL, where Charity works, and what kind of services and offerings they have. If you're interested in this type of thing, where to go to get more information. So please welcome to the stage, Charity Becker. Charity, hello, how are you?
Hi, David. I'm good. I would say thank you for the introduction, except that now I have imposter syndrome. So I'm retracting.
I wasn't talking about you. I was talking about a different Charity Becker.
Excellent. Good. Yeah. One of the unfortunate things about my name is that that's very rarely the case. There tends to be only one.
It's the same with my name as well. It's kind of like, there's another David Wallach. It's like there is no other David Wallach.
No, I'm yeah.
How are you doing anyway? This is. I know we had a bit of a brief catch up before we started recording, but you're on the other side of Australia to me. I'm in Perth, and you're in Victoria.
I'm in Torquay on the surf coast of Victoria. So. Wadawurrung land, if we're doing traditional names and spaces.
Good point.
Where, given that it is autumn, the weather is behaving itself. It's sunny and not too cold, which is all we can really hope for at the beginning of May in this part of the world.
It is really, isn't it? I'm on the coast now, just moved here at the weekend, and I expected it to be a bit colder and a bit, windier and rainier, but it's sun shining outside, blue skies, not too bad. 28 degrees yesterday. So.
Oh goodness, we're at 17, and so anything over 14, I'm happy with. That's
Right. Okay. 17 already.
Yeah. But
wow.
that's it for the next 6 months. That's our high for until October.
And what will you get down to?
Oh, probably just below double digits. So the highs might drop to 7 or 8, depending on how bad a winter we have. Yeah,
that's not bad. We can drop down to 2-3 degrees here in Perth.
At night it gets lower than that, but the highs will drop to 7.
Yeah, gotcha. All right, okay. Well, thank you
we've talked about the weather. We've done the initial. We're within the law. Yes.
We've covered. It's a typical English thing as well, isn't it? To always talk about the weather. How's the weather? Oh, it's crap. It's crap. Yeah, it's crap here as well. Yeah. Anyway, why don't we? I don't know. I give a bit of a brief overview there of your experience and your vast experience and areas of expertise and all that kind of stuff. How's about you give us a bit of an overview from yourself as to how you got into coaching and some of the key areas that you've worked on in your professional career.
Yeah. My story of how I got into coaching, for anyone thinking that, I'll follow these steps because I want to be a coach, please don't. It was entirely by accident. So there was no plan. I studied and started practicing as a psychotherapist actually in my mid-20s, and loved the study, but loathed the practice, really hated it. Found myself at 26 with a shingle up, qualified, but working with people who were having marriage difficulties and addiction difficulties and things like that. And I was really on my own and quite overwhelmed. Did a quick U-turn back into hospitality, which is where I'd spent large part of my youth. And then answered an ad in the local paper to be a nanny for a woman who needed some help. So I went into nannying for a bit to get out of late nights making cocktails, which I probably had gotten too old for. She ended up being the person who at the time, she was on mat leave, but at the time managed ANZ's executive coaching panel. And so,
get out of town.
I'm not kidding when I say it's by accident. So as I kind of transitioned out of helping her with her 3 young boys, her background was as an organisational psychologist. She saw some potential in me and kind of dragged me kicking and screaming and very, very reluctant into the middle of corporate ANZ. And I grew up with a family of therapists, and so the narrative around corporate at our dinner table was that corporate was why therapy has clients, right? So it was referred to as the dark side.
Yeah.
So I was very suspicious and reluctant. I was also 100% wrong, which isn't the first time that's happened in my life. And I really found my home there. And so within a short amount of time, there were people in that organisation who saw some potential in me that I didn't know was there either. And I took over the managing of their executive coaching panel and matching their C-suite leaders to their coaches. And so the psychotherapy background helped me with that. But one of the things that I really was aware of almost immediately was that unlike psychology, psychotherapy, even counselling, there's no regulations in coaching. So there were there was a spectrum of coaches calling themselves coaches, trained, untrained, charging really whatever they felt like, very little regard to competencies, ethics, boundaries. And I was astounded so I could immediately see the potential of the conversations, but also a little bit horrified at the lack of regulation. IECL was initially a client. We were their client. They were somebody their coaches hire in. So I got to know them, did their training. The bank paid for me to do their training in, I think 2006 would have been the first one. And so I warn people when they come to our level 1 coaching program, be careful because you could end up here. So
come to the dark side.
No, that's right. Well, yes, I've decided that maybe this could be the light side. But yes, so not a career development path though, David, for becoming
But and you mentioned it a few times in there, and I know this is just you being humble, and having tons of humility when you say that people recognize skills in you and things in you that you hadn't seen before. Isn't that really what coaching is about as well? It's about helping the people unearth. I mean, I know there's a metaphor that you use in IECL, which is helping the person find the gold within themselves, which is, and what you say then is just so beautifully aligned to people recognizing that within you at an early date. So how long were you in ANZ? It was ANZ or NAB, you said?
ANZ for 3.5 years, I think, and then started doing project work. So in NAB for maybe 6 months. I had children in amongst all of that. There was a global financial crisis, which if you're in banking and finance is a good time to go away and have babies.
Definitely.
And then kind of restarted as a gig economy coach and facilitator and supervisor of coaches. So then after being a client of IECL's, I became an associate of IECL's. So I was one of the people that they wheeled out into different organisations.
Yep.
I did that reasonably successfully for almost 7 or 8 years, and then 2020 happened. And so the second thing that I've been 100%.
What happened in 2020? I don't think people.
Yeah, I don't know. So
I don't think people know what happened in 2020.
It's repressed trauma at this point for me, David. We don't talk about it. But after declaring loudly to anyone who would listen for at least 5 years that I would never work as an employee again, I would never have a leader, I would never go back into corporate.
Is this the second major time that you were wrong in your career? Okay.
There's probably more, but this is another 180. When I got a call from our then head of coaching and leader development to say, would you like a job? My answer at the end of 2020 was like, absolutely yes. I don't even.
Let me see. The globe's in a strange place. Nothing's guaranteed, and I'm pretty sure the zombies are coming soon.
I've got 2 children. I've got 2 children, and we'd spent the Christmas in between 2019 and 2020 on a very expensive holiday based on the fact that I had an enormous amount of work booked in for 2020, which disappeared. So the answer in November of 2020 was yes, I would very much like a salaried position. Then telling myself I'll do it for a year. Definitely don't want leadership responsibilities. I'm very happy teaching leadership to other people, but because I have such high standard of it, I find it really difficult and don't like doing it. So it's been now over 3 years. I have leadership responsibilities. I'm the head of a department, and
you're so weak. You're so weak, Charity. You flip-flop on yourself all the time, aren't you?
I have come to realize that my predictions are not necessarily tethered to reality, and I'm okay with it.
Here's one for you, because while you're talking, I know why you do what you do, because I've been on the receiving end. I've been a client of yours, essentially. What is it that's kept you in coaching for so long?
The very first thing that you were just referring to around believing that people have gold within themselves, I've never quite let go of that. The untapped potential in people that we think we need to fill with our own advice or teaching or stuff or another course or another badge, that if you can create a relationship with someone where you can teach them to really think about, hang on, what would I do? What do I know? How could I solve this problem? What are my unique experiences and history and skills able to do to solve this problem or to enhance this opportunity? The magic of that has never left me.
Wow.
And I am someone, I don't know if I've said this to you, I'm late diagnosed with ADHD, but I have had multiple attempts at mainstream education and failed spectacularly and expensively at all of them. But I love learning, and I love learning in dialogue, and I love learning in conversation. And so it's also an adult learning way that you can bring out capability in people without necessarily being didactic. Or telling them they need to think. I'm pretty sure that learning in its traditional sense on its own of a knowledge transfer isn't actually enough, that there's a difference between learning and application. There's a difference between learning and psychological safety. What the world seems to continually be calling for is innovation and creativity. And my belief is that comes out of asking people to show the gold they've got rather than telling people based on your experience or my limited view of the world what they should be doing or thinking. So
it's
on a whole basis, it's wonderful to watch people realize that they can come up with their own solutions. And on a large basis, I think this might actually lead to world peace and fixing the environment. So.
Okay. So we've got global plans.
Yep.
From a local level.
Yes. Well, and one of the reasons I like teaching these courses is that, I can only coach one person at a time. But if I teach a class of 20 coaches how to coach, then the ripple effect of that is amplified. So
yeah. And for those people listening as well, I mentioned in the beginning, what Charity just mentioned there, I was part of the class, 3-day class, which was part of the level 1 certification. And during the 3 days, Charity and her colleagues go through the foundation, go through the structure, and then we have to do actual experience coaching on our set, on other people, on other cohorts, and also with the instructors. And Charity was my instructor and coachee for quite a few of my coaching experiences there. So that was quite an interesting experience, and it's daunting, but it's also really not easy, but I think because you are so, and obviously your colleagues at IECL are so aware of the journey that people have to go on, you make it so much easier to be able to have that early learning experience and be able to make mistakes. And it doesn't really matter. There are really no mistakes as long as there's continual learning in that process. And it was, as I mentioned to you the other week as well, it was one of the most profound 3 days that I've had in any kind of training. And ever since then, I've been slowly trying to transition my life into more coaching arena. And that was partly down to you and your colleagues as well. And the fact that everything that you just talked about there, about, I've never felt, very similar to you, I've never felt like someone who needs to tell everybody what to do. I always feel that people, if you give them enough room and space, they can come up with it themselves as well. And why don't we go from there? Because that's a very interesting paradox when you talk to people about coaching, people's normal, in the general populace, stereotypical interpretation or paradigm of coaching seems to be more along the original sports coaching type of line, where you've got the coach on the sidelines, you're screaming to the people, or you've got the Olympic athlete, and then you've got the coach there telling them exactly what they're doing wrong and what they should do, blah, blah, and all that kind of stuff. We're here to put that to bed and say that that's not what we're talking about. So this is one of the reasons why I'm doing this channel as well, to kind of bring a level of education to as many people that, listen to these things about what we mean when we're talking about organizational coaching. And I know it's a broad question. We've touched on this earlier on as well, and it's kind of like, it's so big, you really can't get a grasp on it sometimes. But how do you explain it to people when you're talking about it?
Okay. Let me see if I can do the simple version that won't put your audience to sleep. We know that organisations thrive when they are learning organisations. So if they stay static, they fail. So what our traditional model of leadership, of learning in organisations, it comes from our mainstream teaching, is the idea that the person at the front of the room, be that a leader or a teacher or a mentor, has information based on experience or based on training, and that their job is to impart that information. So that's incredibly useful if you are starting out in something. If you think about learning to drive, you need someone to tell you what the things do and how the gears work and how that only gets you to a certain point. So it gets you to the point where you can maybe pass the driving test, is kind of understanding the nuts and bolts, and you need someone in there teaching you. Learning how to be a driver out on the road requires you to think for yourself, make decisions, think about what your values are. There's a whole bunch of other stuff that goes into it, and that's where coaching comes in. So we don't say it's a replacement for mentoring or teaching or training or giving advice, but that it's an addition that most of the leaders that we speak to when we're working in organisations are exhausted with the amount of work that they're doing at levels below themselves. They're having to do the job of the next layer and even the next layer down. They're giving advice. People are coming to them repeatedly with the same questions. What do you think I should do? We've got this problem. What's the answer? So they're worn out and frustrated with the lack of initiative and confidence that their people have in solving their own problems. Mm-hmm. And there's an innovation problem in organisations where they know the same thing isn't going to keep working, but they don't know how to unlock what's the next thing. Telling people what to do gets in the way of all of that. If instead of doing that, you ask someone who is trained, There needs to be a level of competence. We're not saying,
Yeah.
put the 10-year-old in the car and ask them what they think they should do. That's not the.
I mean, it might be quite interesting, but it's not going to be.
I've lived on farms, and that's how some kids learn how to drive. Right, in a paddock where there's no danger, maybe. What organisations do, though, is they spend an enormous amount of time, money, and effort hiring smart people, finding smart people, sourcing them, putting them in roles, and then telling them what to do instead of asking them, what do you think we should do? What would be a solution you could come up with? One of our favourite questions in the level 1, the basic one, is like, what's the most courageous thing you could do?
Yeah.
And trusting that the smart, capable person that's been hired can come up with their own answers, can manage the mistakes of applying their own answers if they don't work. Also, that they might know more than you do. Or have better ideas than you about what's next.
You're going to bruise a lot of egos with that one, Charity.
Well, there is some. I think part of the unlearning of becoming a coach is letting go of the idea of you're right. The thing that balances that out for me is that it's so ingrained in me to be very cautious before giving advice that I'm now worried if I do give advice. I'm like, oh my goodness, what if that person takes it? What if they do what I say and I'm now responsible? I've already told you I've been massively wrong twice, at least. I don't.
We've covered that in the last 20 minutes. There's got to be more than that.
there's another one I'll tell you in a minute. But I don't want to be responsible for other people's career choices, their decisions at work. I trust the people that work for me. I trust the people that I coach. And so where this is different, I think where I enjoy it more than the therapy that I was doing is that you've got smart, resourced, capable people in front of you who might get stuck or find systems frustrating or find certain people or being able to influence outcomes frustrating, but they actually know how to do it if we just stop telling them what's been done before. Yeah. So every bit of advice we give people is based on past experience. Here's what worked in the past, but when we're trying to create innovation, confidence, competence, what worked in the past isn't, what got us here isn't going to get us there. And so coaching is a beautiful way of adding to the other conversations leaders have. Bring out that potential.
Okay.
I said it was going to be short. It was the opposite of that. So can I give you a very short version?
We're just going to edit that all out, to be honest.
Right.
We're just going to no, we're not. We're not really.
Short version is that instead of giving people your gold, you ask them questions to extract their own gold. So instead of a push conversation, which advice and training is, this is a pull conversation where you ask people to apply their own gold, which they already have.
See, that was the corporate answer. I prefer your original personal answer. I like
That's
that
fine.
one better.
You can edit the corporate one out.
I'm not going to edit anything. You know what? I actually really liked your car metaphor because it really did bring home the fact that I tried telling people, look, don't coach the problem, coach the person.
That's it.
And they go, what do you mean by that? And I said, well, go and read the book for starters. But by saying, look, you need someone who's capable to do the technical aspects of what you require them to do. Sure. But then it's like, okay, you got someone in the car. How do you get that person who's passed their test to become a rally car driver or to become a Formula One driver? The mechanics are identical. Yep. I mean, the levers may be up here and whatever. The mechanics, 4 wheels, engine, motion, brakes, they're all the same. It's the internal barriers and the expectations and the values and the motivation that the person has that will enable them to become a Formula One driver as opposed to just a normal driver on the roads and the streets. And it's the coach's job to help that person with those internal, intrinsic elements in order to be able to perform better. Yes. I really love that metaphor you've got there. I think I might steal it. Do I need to pay you any trademark?
No, I just made it up then, so it's all
Did
yours.
You? Okay.
It's IP that happened on your show. I feel that you probably got the right story. But the other thing is, so just to build on that, so in organizational coaching, it's not just the internal stories we tell ourselves or the emotional state or whatever. To take your metaphor and build on it,
Yep.
It's how do you apply those in different environments, right? How do you drive when it's rainy,
Yes.
when it's dark, when you are on a Formula One track, as opposed to, in the soccer mum car taking the kids.
And you've got another car right behind you, pressuring
you.
you.
Yeah. Or I drive on highways a lot, or a big truck right behind you with its high beams on. How do you drive when you're tired? How do you drive when there's a lot of pressure to get somewhere and you feel like you're going to be late? How do you drive when you're stuck in traffic? So the external environment is always changing for leaders. It's the stresses come and go in different ways. But that's the other thing that coaching does, is it takes the organizational context into consideration.
Yes.
It's not just you as a person. It's, okay, in this environment, with this project, in this context, how do you need to apply those skills that you've got? What do you need to be thinking about differently? Who do you need to be having conversations with, or bringing into meetings? So the difference between coaching and organizational coaching is that context is a huge part of it. The same as driving in Formula One is pretty different to doing the school run.
Okay, what you just said then, sorry, I was with you, and so you just said the difference between coaching and organizational coaching.
Yeah.
So can you explain that?
You can learn the fundamentals of coaching and apply them to just about anything. There are lots of people out there who do something called life coaching.
Oh, yeah.
Which is, again, assuming that people can come up with the gold for themselves. But the context, like you're saying, is more around just learning to do life, right? What's your life? Organizational coaching. And so this is one of the things that I like about IECL, is it teaches from a systemic perspective how people need to think about the organization as a system. So people aren't acting in isolation. They have to be able to influence. They have to be able to lead with direct or indirect authority. They have to be able to make decisions about what to say no to, for example.
It's harder. It's harder
than it sounds. And so one of the other things I've been completely wrong about is at the end of 2019, when I signed off for the year, still working for myself, swanning in and out of businesses, not a care in the world, about to go on a 4-week holiday. No sense in doing whatsoever. Yes. I was convinced, I've got the blog written and thankfully not published, that leaders in basically everywhere in corporate were at capacity. There was nothing else that could be asked of people. The biggest theme for me in the coaching that I was doing was around time management. How do I do the things that I want to do but say no to the other things? How do I do the things I want to do and still have a life at home? And it was such an enormous stress on people. So I was sure that everybody was at capacity. I think 6 months later, everybody was doing about 30% more than that, if not 50% more, because they were working from home and they stopped being able to switch off. But one of the things that then you're able to say to people is, okay, so in this environment, in COVID, first wave of big COVID, what do you need to do differently? How can you put up boundaries? How do you want to manage this context, which has changed drastically? Because 6 months ago, you would start work when you got to work after a commute from work, and then you would finish work. When you'd finish, you'd commute back and you'd transition. That all disappeared. And so there needed to be different conversations, and they were very personal with people. I couldn't have given advice on what you need to do. I had one counterpart whose strategy, so that when he finished work, he didn't share his mood from work with his poor homeschooled kids, his partner, was that he negotiated with his partner to go and do the Coles shop every day, and that became his commute. Was going to do so. He'd finish work, get straight in the car, and do the shop, so that he could transition from work role to home role.
Right. Okay. That's interesting. Now, I remember, this is going back, obviously, way, PC pre-COVID. We're now, or was it BC before COVID? I can't remember now. I think it's probably BC, isn't it? BC. But 25 years ago, I was talking to a friend of mine, and he landed a job where he was working from home. And because he had to fly out occasionally, and they didn't have an office, and it was a warehouse. But anyway, he was working from home. And I asked him how it's going, and I was talking to him about it. And he said, David, it's interesting. He said, I really struggled for the first 3 months. And then I discovered that even though the study of his house is actually in his house, he would only ever go in his study once he got dressed in his suit and shirt and tie. And then when he left the study, he would get changed. And it was, although it was a physical act, it was also a metaphorical and a value-based act to go, okay, now work is over. I'm taking off that uniform. And it sounds like, that drive was a similar kind of end of one phase of the day and the start of a new phase,
Exactly. But those, it's an example of the fact that I could never have given this person advice, right? No. I didn't know what was going to help. So, but asking him, he said, it was amazing. He was saying, I really resented the commute. I've been resenting that commute for ages. And I now see that what it did was help me get in and out of role. And I'm really missing it. And so he found a way to bring it back in. He created a commute for himself.
Yeah. So, and you could have given him a suggestion, and he could have tried it once or twice, and it wouldn't. Yeah. It may or may not have landed.
May or may not have worked, but the suggestion would have been based on me and my experience in my environment. And he was then the other thing that in that example that coaching does, when people come up with their own answers, you're actually teaching them to come up with their own answers. So you are building the muscles for people, instead of saying, what do you think I should do, to be able to trust themselves and go, hang on, what do I think I should do?
Based on my values, based
on my values, based on my experience, based on the fact that, I know more about me and my life and my role than anybody else does. I'm the expert. Yeah. What do I think I should do? Yeah. And, by all means, go and check that out with people once you've made the decision. It doesn't, I'm not saying only socialize your ideas.
Must rob a bank. Dave, you might want to think. Yeah, you may want to think that one through a little bit.
Exactly. And we outsource our potential and intelligence to people really fast. Whether it's just, reading blogs on the internet or doing more courses, or we don't capitalize on the enormous amounts of experience and potential we have. And it's one of the other things about coaching is you're teaching people to trust themselves. And think about how they make their own decisions, and think about, most of us can list the values that we've either been told we have by some psychometric test at some point or other, or that we've decided we've got. But if in coaching you ask people, okay, how would you apply your values to this decision? Yeah. It's teaching people to apply their values to all of the decisions that they're making. So it becomes a sustaining practice, because you don't have to keep going and asking people, what do you think I should do?
Yeah. Yeah, it's almost like you've then been given the permission to have the discussion and dialogue with yourself before you start outsourcing it in your language to somebody else and giving them the power to make decisions for you. You can actually go, no, okay, well, how does this?
I can drive this car. I've been driving this car for a really long time now. I'm good at driving this car. And if something goes wrong, I'll fix it, or I'll take it to the mechanic, or if, I've got insurance in case I run into something. I know how to drive this car.
Yeah. No, that's really good. And I will definitely steal that metaphor of driving a car, by the way, just so you know. That's definitely mine now. It's all done and dusted.
I was driving a friend of mine. Actually, she's the woman who I was the nanny for. I was in the car with her recently. She was the passenger, and I had my Apple car on and, maps on and everything. And she started directing me. It's funny because she's a coach. She started saying, turn left here. And she would be ahead of it. And she almost caused an accident because I was listening to her. And I had to say, listen, I've been driving for ages. I'm like, I'm okay.
I've got this down pat. I
don't need instruction. I don't even need coaching on driving. But it's just that confidence to go, I know how to do this. Yep. I know how to handle it if it doesn't go perfectly.
Yep. And that's awesome. And for those people out there as well who are listening to this for the first time, just being exposed to, what organizational coaching is, there's a couple of paradigms which, maybe not paradigms, someone who's been quite pivotal in the development of the GROW model, which is the primary system that's used at IECL, is a guy called Sir John Whitmore from the UK. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us, but so that you can get that distinction as well between other forms of coaching and organizational coaching. The formulation, which is at the bedrock of everything, is performance is potential minus interference.
Yeah.
So we're talking about, in order for me as an employee, at whatever level I am, in order for me to increase my performance, I have to be aware of both, have to be self-aware, both simultaneously of my potential and also any interferences that I have, in order to be able to mitigate the interferences to increase the performance. Now, it's the coach's job to bring around that self-awareness piece for me to appreciate more my capability, my potential, and also to address and start working on any interferences. Now, they could be biases, they could be self-limiting thoughts, they could be self-esteem issues,
so there could be
environmentals. There's so many things that could be keeping the performance of a person down. So when we're talking about organizational coaching, we're talking about improving the performance of the individual and ultimately for the ROI, the performance of the organization, if you're having that conversation at those different levels. So that's what we mean when we talk about organizational coaching. But all that's explained on the website that you can go to and have a look. Is this a good time for us to have a look at the IECL website to have it? Because I know you touched on it to begin with when you're talking about, so you've essentially gone from a clinical-based clientele to a non-clinical based clientele. Now, for people who don't understand what I mean by that, Charity originally started out dealing with people who had
mental health,
who had mental distress,
or mental distress, or relational distress is probably
So they would, and this is a broad stroke thing. So they are performing below average because of some environmental or personal factor in their life, which is causing them. They're what's called, they've got pathologies, they're clinically depressed, or they've got anxiety or something along those lines. Everyone above that is classed as non-clinical, they're classed as normal. Now, the above that is where Charity now works in, which is okay, we're assuming that you're not clinically depressed or any of these clinical aspects, and we're trying to improve your performance. So you've officially kind of switched from one side to the other, haven't you? You prefer the performance side more than the clinical side? And is there a crossover for you? Has there been crossovers?
I prefer it, I think in a shallow sense, probably because it's more fun.
It's not as serious, is it? It's not as
serious. I mean, you can crack jokes in therapy, but it depends on what's going on. I think there is crossover. So we're not saying that to be coached, you need to be, mental health comes up in coaching. And so for a lot of people, actually, when they're with a coach who is able to create a trusted relationship, listen really well, things will come up that do belong in the therapeutic space. So one of the things that organizational coaches need to be really good at is knowing what is within and without the boundaries of the coaching, and particularly because the organization's paying for it. They're not paying for therapy because most coaches aren't therapists. And even if they are, that's not what they're being paid to do. So there is, of course, an overlap, and the conversation around mental health has just increased people's awareness of where that is. So it's not uncommon at all when I'm coaching leaders and something comes up for me to be able to say, it sounds like that was a big thing that you've just said, that belongs in a therapeutic space, not a coaching space. What support have you got about that? It's also not uncommon at all now for people to have both. So for people to be in some form of therapy and counselling for their personal lives and then have a coach at work, the two actually complement each other. I'm a fan of, have a squad of supporting people around you. Get all the, have a have a personal trainer and a coach and a therapist and
dietitian, have it all, get it all in there.
I'm going to keep going with the metaphor and say, like a pit crew, like there's a bunch of people in there helping you get back on the track.
Oh, I love it. I'm definitely stealing that.
So coaching isn't the only valuable conversation. It's not more or less valuable than advice giving or mentoring either. It's just often the missing one that people aren't as comfortable doing. So yes, there's certainly a crossover. There's certainly times where people who are in organizations need therapeutic or counseling support for a multitude of reasons. There's also a line between, a lot of the organisations we work in now have EAP as an option, have a way, have an alternative place to gain support. So I'm very aware of those boundaries. We teach those boundaries very clearly in IECL. We recommend that anybody doing coaching, I would say at this point, anybody who's in a leadership role where you have some responsibility for people's well-being, and there's research actually that says leaders have an enormous impact on the well-being of people they leave, as much as their partners is the current.
As much, if not more, I think it is, isn't it?
Yep.
It's such a big part, and I want to loop this back into the beginning because I want to give us time as well to have a look at the website. Right at the very beginning, you mentioned, there is a looseness around the professional, around the practicing of coaching, and it is for this very reason that we're discussing here why training, whether it be through an RTO or tertiary as well, and all this type of stuff to raise awareness around your responsibilities as a coach, which is why they're so important, isn't it? Because like you said, you need to have the tools, you need to know the boundaries, you need to, in level 2 terminology, you need to be able to recontract that discussion continually, but you have to learn that, don't you? So that's where, so how does IECL position themselves in terms of making the coaching profession professional?
There's a version of me that's 16 and was rebellious and got around in docks with blue hair and fishnets that is very disappointed that I'm trying to.
I did exactly the same thing when I was 16 as well.
Yeah, she's very annoyed that I talk about ethics all the time. But so one of the things that we recommend anybody that does training with us, and certainly our associates do, is mental health first aid training, so that you know how to have that other conversation if it comes up without stepping into the space. Yep. We are, I would say, almost obsessive about this idea of professional ethics, and we teach that in all of our courses. We ensure that anybody that associates of ours are in supervision, which again isn't required to be a coach. Nothing is required to be a coach. You can put up a shingle tomorrow and say, I'm a coach. There's a lot of people out there doing that and earning quite good money. But so we're an advocate of doing the training, one, so that you know what coaching is and what coaching isn't, which we spend, a decent amount of time on at the beginning of level 1, because the marketplace is confused. There are coaches who are confused about what coaching is and what coaching isn't. And again, because the word is kind of ubiquitous, like you say, we talk about sports coaches and there's a bunch of other stuff. There's a lot of leaders who believe that any one-on-one development conversation is coaching. And so we want to make a distinction between that. But we also spend some time on when not to coach. When is coaching not the right conversation? Because it absolutely isn't the only useful conversation. And if what you really need is advice or help, or, if you're hurtling towards the brick wall in the car, you sometimes need the instructor to put their foot on the brake that they've got there for you so you don't hit it. There's times when coaching isn't helpful. I'm friends with a lot of coaches. I can tell you they get annoying if what you want to do is
don't coach me now. I just need someone
please don't. My kids are very sensitive to any attempt on not interested. Not interested. So, it's the professionalization of it is both being aware of what it is, so that if you're selling these as an offering to people, that you're actually selling what you say that it is that you're selling. It's also to try and limit. I can't tell you how many calls we get from people each year who have been sold coaching by someone who isn't doing coaching, and they can't get their money back, and there's no recourse because there is no sense of it. I think there's a risk of coaching. There's two sides to it. Organizational coaches work with professionals, so we need to be at least as professional as the people that we're working with. Like anybody in banking and finance, for example, has standards and codes of ethics and laws that apply to them that they need to apply to. I think there's a risk that in Australia, what happened with the Royal Commission into banking and finance, which resulted in financial advisors being regulated by the government, essentially.
Right.
Meaning that you imagine what the government does when it decides to step in and regulate something, because there's been an enormous amount of bad publicity, but they over-regulate and they put in, for example, to be able to be a financial advisor, you had to have an undergraduate degree in a related subject, which meant that there was an enormous amount of professionals working who then would have to go back and study to be able to keep doing their job, and has no link to them actually being good financial advisors. So I worry that if we don't, as professional organisational coaches, do this well, we're going to be made to down the track by somebody that doesn't understand what it is. So there's a risk to purchases of coaching in not having someone that knows what they're doing and hasn't put in training, but there's also a risk, I think, to the industry in, a bad news day showing up, something going wrong, and then the wrong people regulating it.
CEO destroys 20,000 homes on advice of coach.
That's right.
Oh, you just destroyed an entire industry.
You can imagine, exactly. So, or, my coach told me that the best thing to do was give this advice. And so I told my team to do this, and exactly. Yeah. So there is, my dream is that this becomes a profession before it's forced to become a profession, and that we professionalize ourselves. And that's something that IECL, with its training, we've got membership, we offer supervision. There's an enormous amount of work that we put into being way above the standard, which is very, very low around professional and ethical practice.
Frameworks, the contracting, the ethics, the morals as well, the time served as well. And you also align yourself very heavily with ICF as well. I had Tim Sprague on a couple of weeks ago, president of Australasia ICF. And for people who don't know, that's like a global
governing body,
interest body, governing body for professionalized coaching. So you can gain ICF accreditation through IECL. I know there's a lot of acronyms we're throwing around here, but essentially you've got the International Coaching Federation, and you've got Institute of Executive Coaching and Leadership here in Australia. And I believe you operate out of Asia as well, don't you?
We do. Asia and New Zealand and the US and Canada.
You're just showing off now, Charity. You're just showing off.
I've got my CEO in my head saying, don't you.
So you've got these RTOs.
They're not. So RTOs not. But yes, we've got our courses are.
In fact, let's bring up the webpage, shall we, so we can have a look? Because let's see if I can do this. It's been a few days since I've been playing around with this, but let's see if we can.
You might get a very. You might immediately get a bot wanting to talk to you about.
No, I logged on earlier.
There we go. Oh yeah, beautiful.
So why don't we have a look at some of the well, you tell me where you want. Say someone has listened to this to this YouTube video or podcast, because it's also going to be on Spotify. A bit of a plug there for people listening to this. Search for the New View Safety Coach on Spotify and you'll see all the interviews there as well. And they thought, you know what, I really enjoy listening to them. It sounds like me. It sounds like something I want to get into. Where do I start? Where would you advise people to go to from this
exactly page? The page that you're on, actually. So Organisational Coaching Level 1 certification. Whether you're a leader in an organisation, whether you are leading projects, whether you're wanting to influence people, or if you are thinking that you might want to professionalise your current coaching practice, or you might want to one day be a coach. So this, I've been teaching this course since 2009. It's still... I still love it because I never get bored with it. There is it's a fun course, but there is some unlearning. So that process that you talked about before, we're pretty comfortable knowing that people are going to find it frustrating on day 1. By day 2, they're kind of on board, and by day 3, a lot of them are converts. So that's the process of it. But it gives the foundational concepts and also an enormous amount of practice, so that you come out of there. We use a Pilates metaphor to say that we're going to isolate the coaching muscle. We know that you're good at giving people advice. We know you're good at teaching. We know you're good at standing at the front of the room and telling people what to do. This course isolates the muscle that helps you really dig for that gold. And it can be, I mean, I should probably ask you what your experience of it was, but it can be hard work at times. And people come out of there challenged and usually pretty excited about the capacity to apply what they've learned.
Yeah, no, and I agree with you. I mean, me personally, my personal personality traits and, you know, my values and everything as well, they aligned more. I was always confused with being told I had to tell people what to do. I remember going to, I remember being like 17 and my mother taking me to the military recruitment office, and I'm going in there, and I did okay at school. You know, I wasn't the best, but I certainly wasn't the worst, you know, B's and a couple of A's and whatnot. And the recruiting officer turning around to me and saying, and I've blogged about this and I've written about this in my essays for uni as well, saying to me, you know, with these grades, you can go straight in as an officer in the Navy and you'd be telling 40-year-old men what to do. And I remember thinking, I don't want to tell anybody what to do, let alone 40-year-old sailors. What are you talking about? That's just crazy. So it really, I mean, I was on board from day one, but what I have seen, to testament what you were saying then, is when leaders not only see the benefit that they could get personally, but when they use coaching techniques on other people, it actually reduces their workload.
Yes.
It reduces their workload. It empowers people. It does everything which they're supposed to be doing as leaders. It's the catalyst for them to be a better leader. It's like this advice. I think it's Michael Bungay Stanier talks about this advice monster inside of all of us. We just want to help and we want to fix and we want to send people on their way. What would you do? Go and do it, and if it's wrong, we'll work it out together. And
what happens? Yeah,
we'll see what happens. It's that empowerment piece, and then, guess what happens? They don't come to you next time to free you up to actually do the work that you need to do. So it's beautiful on those two axes, I suppose. But why don't we tell people here as well in the last 10 minutes? Why don't we tell people about? Okay, so I'm already a coach. I'm only level 1, level 2. I wasn't aware, or I was only partially aware of ICF, you know, getting this high level accreditation to this international board to help further the profession of coaching and to, you know, get that bedrock, because it's becoming more and more now, especially when you start talking to international organizations, it's an entry level requirement, isn't it? It's okay, you want to come and talk to ANZ or, you know, ANZ or NAB or any other, you know, large organizations.
They need some way of assessing a base level of training, and so to get
competency,
and so to get our credentials, you have to show both of those, but to get ICF, it's even more. And we're hearing from a lot of coaches now who have been working for a long time as coaches and say, I need the bit of paper because it's become a barrier to my work to not have the ICF credential or to not have and they ask if they can come straight in to our advanced courses, and the answer is always no. You need to go and do again, you know, essentially it's, I don't know, I've been driving a tractor. Can you put me in the Formula 1 car? And you go, no.
And I know you've got a lot of experience in your tractor. I'm not taking that away from you.
I'm not 100% the tractor's good, but this is a different vehicle in a different environment. And so the credentials,
and as you alluded to earlier as well, this minor inconvenience here could be so much less than any kind of government imposed inconvenience that gets laid on over the top later on.
To say, I mean, for me, if I was asked to do the course that you're doing at uni, David, if the government came in and said you have to do Sydney Unis, I mean, that's the end of my coaching career. So I'm trying to swerve around that particular potential.
To be honest with you, after yesterday's 3-hour lecture, I was pretty close to swerving around that particular responsibility as well. But it's tough. It's tough going. But you're right, though. You're right. It's a little bit of inconvenience now to hopefully make sure that the industry doesn't get government regulated further on down the track. So IECL work very closely with ICF, and their requirements are very much aligned with IECL's training modalities, training topics, training techniques, and all that kind of stuff. So when someone comes, like myself, wants to work through the ranks through the training of IECL, they are working towards that high level ICF accreditation, which is for if they want to make a career out of this and start dealing, with the blue chip organizations around the world.
Yeah.
All right.
And
Fabulous.
I think just one of the other things, so the courses are 3 days. Did you do all of yours online, David?
My 3-day one, yes, I did it all online because it was 2021, so it was mid.
I had no choice. So they're 8-week courses, 7-week courses with online work pre and post. Everything we teach is evidence-based, but the 3-day intensive is an intensive.
Where's that for people to see? If you can guide me there.
Back into level 1, where you were before.
Level 1?
Yeah. That should say, no, that's going to bring you up. I think if you send people to download, there we go, duration. Course content, there you go. The 3-day intensive, often people are a bit nervous about. You can do it face-to-face or online now. We recommend actually that you do the training in the modality that you'll be doing the coaching. So if you're still working largely virtually, come and do the training virtually because you do real practice with people and you want to practice in the environment you're in. If you're back on face-to-face, come to one of the face-to-face courses. It is a 3-day intensive because we find it takes that long to really get that muscle working. So we don't make apologies for the 3 days. It's necessary.
It could be longer. It could easily be a 5-day course. It could, couldn't it?
People kind of get it early on, but being able to do it is not. It takes a little bit of time, and so our commitment to training professional coaches is that we want those muscles to be developed when they walk out of the course. So that's part of what we do. But they're all taught by faculty who are both ICF credentialed and practicing coaches. So there's no one in there that's just theoretical. These are anybody that's training in these courses is doing the doing.
Yeah.
As well.
It was you and I believe it was Tony that I had for the for the level 1. So, I mean, you probably couldn't get 2 more qualified people in Australia to actually come and do the level 1 coaching, to be honest with you, could you?
And also full of our own mistakes, full of the learnings that we've had around, here's something that I thought was helpful when I started out and really wasn't. And here's the way that we know that you're going to get to see, one of the things that newer students say very early on is, well, if I'm asking them a question, what if they really don't know the answer? And so the belief that they don't have to know it yet, but you telling them isn't getting them anywhere good. And that the more that you coach, the more you see the benefit of coaching, and you just have to stick with it to see it. We know that because we've been doing it for a really long time. So you don't, everyone's a practitioner that comes into these courses.
Yeah. And I remember you and Tony talking about, look, when you ask a question and they don't know the answer, that's great. Give them time and hold that pause. And that, a lot of people find that really difficult to do because they want the conversation to be a conversation, but this is not a conversation per se. It's a structured conversation, but I actually really enjoy those pauses. And I think my record, I keep tab as to how long I can keep quiet for. And I think it's been like 20 odd seconds where I've just kind of sat there and just gone, no, this is the ball's in your court. And the person's looking at you going, tell me. And you're like, no, this is all, you doing the hard work. I'm just asking the easy questions here.
And they come up with it. They do. So I talk about that sometimes as being a bit like playing a game of chicken. Like, again, who's going to swerve first? But
you really love this car metaphor, don't you?
I've never thought about it before, but I'm not going to swerve first because if I believe that you've got the gold, I'm going to wait for you to come up with it and learn in the moment that you can get past your own I don't knows. I don't know for me is the exciting bit in a conversation because what's about to occur is new thinking.
Yeah.
And
definitely.
It's where most people slam on the brakes.
Yeah. So when people talk and say, okay, well, you're only asking questions, how hard can that be? Charity there is just really kind of elucidated some of the skills that you need to have, which is self-control, your own self-awareness, to be able to not give advice, your ability to see things conceptually and be able to go, okay, well, where is the person now? What are their goals? How are they going to get there? And you need to be able to structure your questions and the way you ask them in a way to guide the person towards where they need to be. And ultimately, that's their decision. You don't get to decide. You just get to help put the bricks in front of them when they tell you where to put them. That's essentially to kind of keep on the... That really wasn't a good car metaphor, was it? Tarmac on the road where they tell you to put it.
There you go. That's tarmac's better than bricks, I think. But and all while letting go of the idea that you know the best option forward for them, which I have to say, for anybody aspiring to be a coach, so I'm 15 years in now, that hasn't gotten any easier. I've gotten better at not offering my advice, and I've gotten better at knowing that they don't need it because they come up with their own. But the instinct to tell people what to do is as strong as it is. I've just learned by enormous amounts of practice-based evidence that they don't need it.
And also as well, looping back to what you mentioned at the beginning about supervision. So supervision is essentially a coach's coach, so that you can go and you can be coached by someone who's got more experience than you and all that kind of stuff. So that you can go and have these coaching conversations as a coach to be able to talk about your problems so that you're in a better place when you're talking to your coachee.
So at risk
Did that make sense?
Metaphor to death. You don't know, without a supervisor, you've got no one watching your blind spots. So supervision is essentially an extra set of eyes on your practice, because when you're working with someone one-on-one, there are moments where you think, did I do that well? Was that wobbly? What was going on? And so then you need someone to take that stuff to help you. And any other professional practice in a one-on-one environment has supervision. But coaches tend to, because it's not regulated, again, because they're not made to, tend to miss this part of their professional practice. So I wouldn't coach without a coaching supervisor. I love coaching. I love the coaches that come to supervision. I am a supervisor as well, but I don't know. I can't see the back of my own head. I can't see my own blind spots. So I need someone there to check my mirrors to make sure that I am in service of people and not my own sneaky ego that thinks it knows best.
And we're all subject to that as well, aren't we? Whether we know it or not. Okay, so let's look at this before we wrap up. If someone, again, has heard, okay, IECL sounds like the place that I want to go to get my training, how do they get in contact with you? I can see we've got a contact tab here on the page.
There's a contact tab there. If you jump onto that website, there'll be a little pop-up bot that says that it's happy to create a Calendly appointment with any of the people that you could talk to help direct you where to start, where you might want to go, which is the most appropriate pathway for you, depending on where you're at now. We also have regular introductory events. So we have, we call them showcases, where you can come and, some of it would be repeating what you've heard here, but come and have a little bit of a taste of some of the stuff we teach in the course, talk to some of the
faculty. Where would they be able to find them?
If you go back into, I saw it a moment ago, if you go back into coaching courses, I think there was something called free introductory events down on
gotcha.
That one.
Yeah,
so we
right.
Okay. Regularly, we have, there you go, information that we can send out to you. You could probably tell from this podcast, I could talk about coaching and coach training forever. So I'm always open to it.
So it says an hour on here, people, but what they really mean is it's 2 hours if Charity's doing it.
No, absolutely not. I've learned to keep it succinct in that one, but yeah, it's just, it gives people a sense of what the look and feel of the classroom is, but also where the different pathways lead to. And a little bit of what we've been talking about is what's it for and why bother with professionally becoming trained.
Yeah.
I guess, can I ask one more question, David, of you, just to say what is the why bother for you around being professionally trained? If you were someone that had natural leadership capabilities or had learnt those through work, if you were someone that kind of was successful at work and had become reasonably senior, we got a lot of people who say, oh yeah, I think I'm sort of doing this organically anyway. What would be why should people bother with I think you called it inconvenience. That's it.
Yeah. Damn you for asking these
Such a
questions.
coach. Yeah.
Yeah, you are. Why me? Why did I? So your question really was, why did I gravitate towards it, or why do
even
I think
why
other people should?
having done it, what's the benefit of it compared to just kind of saying, oh yeah, I reckon I can do this and starting?
Well, I think, and I kind of alluded to it a little bit earlier. The benefit is depending on who you are and what you need. If you're a leader and you want to improve your performance, then this is the way. This isn't just another course that you go on. This isn't just another thing that you learn. It's almost like an instruction manual to yourself, and you write your instruction manual, so you get to understand yourself more. And the more you understand yourself and sometimes we don't even know what we're thinking until we say it, and until we're given, as you say in level 2, we're given that crucible, we're given that safe space to just talk. And it's only when we talk that we actually think and we realize what we're saying. We might think that we thought everything through in our head, but it's only when we say it or when we write it down, that's when it becomes reality. And that's when we get to see it and objectively look at it and decide whether it's of value, or if it's serving you, or if it's not serving you, or if it could be better. And for me, and I've always been interested in self-improvement. So it's like that. It is literally like learning about yourself. So that's from the individual. And you always go, every coaching session where I'm the coachee, regardless of who it is, I always go away exhausted.
Yep.
And really thankful and grateful that I'm just, someone just asked me a question that I thought I had sussed out when really I hadn't even thought it through. So that's from my perspective as an individual. Why leaders should use the skills is because as leaders, they can give that capability to the people that report into them.
Yeah.
And if you can give them that capability, you make your job so much easier, which we alluded to earlier on, which is empowerment. And every organization wants to empower its people. Every organization wants to have a psychologically safe environment where people are free to talk and discuss and have that conflict. Psych safe isn't about not having conflict. It's about having structured, organized, respectful conflict. And you have that in coaching all the time.
All the time. It's actually essential, is that there needs to be some tension and challenge in it for it to be valuable.
Yeah. Tell me why you think that way. And it's like,
or what haven't you thought of yet? Or, how is what you've just said the worst possible way of getting this done?
God. Yeah. Tell you what, I got asked the other day. I was the coachee. I got asked, so what question, Don, you want me to ask?
That's it.
And I'm like, oh, damn, I know what that is as well. It's just like, So yeah, that's I suppose those are my whys. And that's why I'm so interested in the profession. And I love doing it, and, trying to raise awareness as well, and try to because it hurts me personally when I talk to people about being a coach and I go, oh yeah, okay, you can coach me on business, you can coach me on this. And it's like, you've got no idea. And it's not their fault. It's not their fault. But we do need to raise the awareness as to what it is and keep the profession, as you said, legitimate, ethical, and as professional as we can.
Yeah. Good answer.
Waffled on a bit there, didn't I?
I know.
All right. Well, that was crikey, 70 minutes nearly.
Oof.
I know. I know.
Maybe
you were worried
maybe
about
you should cut some of it out. Maybe
just take out half an hour of it.
Yeah.
No. I'll take all the stuff I was talking. We'll just leave you talking. There you go. Charity, if you could hang around after I drop you out, just so we can catch up at the end of this, because sometimes people disappear, but I want to be able to say thank you to yourself personally. That would be awesome. But thank you so much for coming onto the channel and sharing your expertise and your knowledge and your passion, and just you. Thank you for being you as well, and being amazing. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, David. It's been really fun.
Awesome. Could we agree to get you on in the future? Talk about specifics of things.
That, or I was wondering, you can cut this bit out if you need to. I was wondering if potentially if you think that your audience is interested, we could do a coaching demo. I could coach you live, and they could see what it's like without like it would be normally. We'd do some.
I'm not paying you for it.
No. It might not be useful. I wouldn't even.
I would love that. And I think the audience might do as well.
There's a difference in talking about it and then experiencing it, and as close as we can get to experience is a demo. So I'm wondering if that might be. I could come back and do something like that.
I'm up for that. Charity. Thank you so much for that.
Awesome.
That's awesome. And we can work out dates and times. So everyone watching, watch the space. We're going to get me on the couch, and Charity's going to coach me, and so you get to see exactly how it goes, and you'll be able to feel and hopefully see the power of asking questions as opposed to telling information. So that's awesome. Yeah. Thank you very much for that invite, Charity. And I'm going to drop you out now, and then say goodbye. But thank you again, and I'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. So that was Charity Becker, the amazing Charity Becker. She's probably going to hate me for saying that, but she is. So thank you again for watching, everybody. I know it was a bit of a long one this week, but we've got so much information there that we wanted to get out there and share with you, and so many great metaphors for helping you, the car metaphor, and it's all in there. We're hopefully going to come back with more information for you so we can start raising the awareness of organizational coaching. You know what it is and where to go to get training and certification and the process you need to go through. So thank you again for watching, and thank you again for everyone for subscribing. I think we're up around 18,000 subscribers now, which is absolutely bonkers. I don't know how that's happening, but I'm, as always, grateful for each and every one of you. So thank you very much, and I'll see you at the next one. Take care, everyone.